Nice loud clacker. All right, so here we go with the assembly of the bot and the mechanism. The first thing we need to do is to get our big plate and our little plate, big plate and the little plate. And we also need on hand, we need the tube connector, and we need our slot nut, which is this little black guy, and we need this this slot nut. Sorry, the slot locking nut. All right, so we'll need those eventually as we get down the steps. So one of the things that you can do is you can take the edges of the plywood and give it a bit of a sanding and finish, or if you've got some sandpaper, heavier sandpaper at home, you might find that a little bit quicker. It's not a very substantial piece of sandpaper. It's just there to help you give a bit of a clean up if you need to. And so I've already done that. So if you haven't done that, give it a sanding and a finishing off before you proceed with this step. The other thing we need to do is start up our super glue, open it. This one's already open, but basically what you do is you keep the black lid on and then you screw this on, and as you screw it on, you'll find that the super glue it opens the super glue. Then just check the flow of the super glue. You don't want a lot, and you want to be careful that you're not squeezing. This is very sensitive. If you squeeze this, you'll get a lot of super glue everywhere. If you don't want super glue on your fingers, it will stick your fingers together. Wear some gloves. So just some latex or rubber gloves, just to protect yourself. If you've got a precious table surface, use a piece of paper just to protect it. And so what we're going to do first is we are going to just open up the bot so that we can look in, so we can get some pressure inside. It's very difficult otherwise. And what we're going to do is just apply a little bit of super glue around the edge of our, just a nice bead around the edge, not too close to the edge of this plate, so that we can get some nice adhesion. And as you can see, I'm being reasonably generous here. What will happen is the paper and the wood will absorb most of that, and then we want to pick it up. That's why you don't want too much close to the edge, and we're going to put it in place on our ORIBOKIT flower. And you want to do this very carefully and very accurately. You want to place it in the middle, you want to line up the edges, and you want to line up the center circle. So you want to have a nice alignment there. And then, because it's open, we can give it a little bit of a press to keep it in shape. And while we've got it there nice and open, we'll take our slot nut and pop that in. Now, it takes a little bit of twisting to get in place, but it will go in. There is a thread in the wooden surface here, so it will end up looking like this, nice and in place there. Oh, I just noticed the flicker on here. It's probably gone now. Apologies for that. I'm going to leave the flicker in, but I'm just going to turn off the light. The fluoro's got a bit of a flicker. Okay, so here we are. Slot nut is in place. That section's glued on nicely. Now we're going to do the same thing, but this time, so make sure the fins are on the outside, and we're going to place the glue this time on the paper, but we don't want too much. I'm hardly even squeezing it. I'm really just tipping the bottle up. If you squeeze the tube, it's just going to come screaming out of there because it's very liquid. And we're going to now pop this fellow in place. So it should just sit nicely in that gap there, lined up with the circles and the edges, and make sure you don't get it stuck to the paper, and make sure that while you're pressing it you don't stick your fingers to the object. Very, very common occurrence working with super glue and doing this. So now that's in place, and now we will take the tube connector. It goes in here, and I'm putting these on so that we've got something additional to hold on to, so that the tube connector is the thread is quite tight. It's the tube connector is cast from a polyester, and the thread is cast, so it's quite a tight thread. Yeah. Yes, Sophia. Sophia, I'm busy doing my video. No, you have to ask Mummy or Bethy.
I don't want Betty.
So the tube connector is now in place. It's cast. The thread's a little bit tight, so you just need to make sure it's got a nice snug fit. It should go right up to the surface of the plate. Should be good like that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to join these two pieces together. This step is quite tricky. So really, if you're feeling in any way tired, or like you think that it's important that you feel in an optimum condition to do this, because it takes some patience, takes a steady hand, and might take some practice and some skill. So if it's the first time that you've ever glued craft paper together, which I guess it is, get a feel for putting the glue on to the craft paper. I mean, here's some that we stuck. New, that piece is gone. So make sure you're feeling good about it. So, but yeah, basically what you can do is you can just do a little bit of practicing just to make sure you can get the idea of how to wet the surface with the, it's really about getting the hang of painting with the super glue, because you don't want too much. You just want, you just want a steady, you just really want to wet the surface. You don't want blobs on there that are going to run when you move it. That's very, very not very helpful. So what we're doing is we're going to place the mechanism. So what happens is that each one of these petals, or like arms of the mechanism, are going to fit onto the petal here, so to the blossom. And so what we're doing is the tips line up at the top, at the peak there, and the middle section lines up in the middle though. So there's no marks for any of this. You have to do it by eye, and it's important that it's as good as you can make it, so that these sections, it's quite easy to see whether it's centered or not. Give you an idea, that's, get a good angle there. That's centered. So I'll show you what one looks like. I'll go through the process. So now what we do is just want to put enough. We're going to get some all the way up the top. I don't want to get any on the washi paper at all. And I want to just wet the surface in the shape of the point here. Get the tip lined up, and then I want to line up the rest of the body. So the tip in place, and then get it lined up so that it's even on both sides. Okay. And then you just hold it in place, and you just hold it for a few seconds. You can see I've still got a little bit of wet glue there. Just be careful of that with your fingers. If you need to use another tool to get in there, I don't recommend being too forceful, but you just really need to hold it for the few seconds so that it will go, so that you just need to hold it so that the glue takes. So it'll take a few, you know, 5-10 seconds for the glue to take. So the next thing we do is we just continue our way around. So that's probably a little bit too much glue. So I want to spread that out. Really, the subtlety in this is not too much glue. And so hence I recommend practicing with the glue. Hence I recommend being patient with this step. Hence I recommend being really concentrating to get that lined up. So you're using, oops, and that can happen from time to time. If you take too long placing it. So you need to apply a little bit of pressure. Okay, now we're in place. All right, now work our way around, get the next one. Just enough glue in the right shape. Take some practice. And get it lined up. And push it from the inside. So I'm using my finger on the inside to push the glue into place. I'll push the two sheets together. Wait for the glue to hold. And now you really want to make sure that the glue join is from the tip to the very bottom section. So you really want a nice glue join. What often happens the first few times that you do it is that this end section close to the base will be lifted up. Try and alleviate that. Try and notice also that there's only certain angles that you can actually, so if you try this angle here, it actually becomes quite hard, but there's like an optimal angle where the mechanism's not, so the angle of this fold here is not too much, so that it just wants to sit flat and connect there. So that takes some, and so, you know, that's why it's handy to have these little extra knobs to hold on to. Gives you something else to get a feeling for it. So just going to do the last two now. Again, this is the trickiest step. Take your time. If you feel like doing one was enough, take a break. There's no rush. You can only do it once. You can pull them apart, but the super glue tends to tear the paper a bit. There's two sets with each one. Perhaps use the first one as your practice run. It will take some time to get it together. The mechanism is also its paper. It's a little bit forgiving, you know, and like the slight imperfections in the angles and the placements, the mechanism will still work. We're not making something out of rigid steel that, you know, if it's a micromillimeter out is not going to function or be too stiff. There is a bit of give and play in this mechanism, so don't stress too much about getting it, you know, about it. As long as it looks like it's centered to the eye, it will be fine. Okay. Whew. Definitely a process that requires concentration and energy, so take your time and definitely do it with all dried components. Make sure that everything's had a good amount of time to dry, and now we can just get a chance to feel the first parts of the play of the motion. I can hold it at the base and tip my finger in from the inside just to touch the tip so there's room for it to close. And we can get an idea of that ORIBOKIT mechanism that we've got going on here, which is very nice, very satisfying, very simple. And that's, you can also get an idea of what it's like to pull it out, that it'll go into shape, and you can see, you get an idea how your mechanism's working. So All good. Okay, now the next step is to do a construction of the mechanism. So hook it up to the other mechanical parts to the wire. So, but best thing to do now is let that rest. Come back to it 10-15 minutes, half an hour. Now's a good time to feel happy with yourself. Got this together. Take it easy. ORIBOKIT is all about getting it right. Okay?